Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our sessions this morning. I would like to introduce Maddy Ruble. She is the Director of Reputation Management at NCBA. Her primary responsibilities include issues management and proactive influencer and media outreach. She places and promotes production-focused content and beef subject matter experts to bridge the gap between consumers and producers. She has a communications and Spanish degree from the University of South Dakota with an emphasis in business administration and has been with NCBA for 4 years. Madeline grew up as a sixth generation on our family's Minnesota cow-calf farm and can be found chasing cattle shows across the country. Please help me welcome Maddy.
Good morning. Okay, well, good morning. Thanks everybody for getting up. This really is like church where we got the crew in the back, so if I start wandering, you'll know why. I've been at NCBA for 4 years. I focus on, I have the coolest job, honestly. I'm on the issues management and media relations team, so I get to play in this proactive and reactive world, as we call it. So reputation management is mostly focused on the proactive things that we can be doing to share our story about beef, the positive story about how beef is raised, the nutritional benefits of including it in the diet, sustainability, all of these great stories that we have to tell. So that's where I get to play. In my bio, it said I get to engage with influencers, so I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of really inflammatory headlines about the negatives of beef production and why we should be choosing plants and not eating beef. And so I get to reach out to those people and take them on farm tours. I spend a lot of time on feedlots and packing plants. I'm just really trying to change some perceptions. And then on the other side of that, when there is an issue or something negative, I get to, help create key messages and work on mostly production-focused topics. So I spend a lot of time in antibiotics land, sustainability land on the reactive side. So it's pretty fun. Every day is different. I grew up on a cow-calf operation in Minnesota. I've got some family photos up there. We show cattle. We've been up through the Minnesota State Fair multiple times. I try to stay pretty active, especially in the Denver area. There's just lots to do, and my family loves it. We go to Stock Show every single year. So it's been a pretty fun 4 years being 12 hours away from home. So what is reputation management? I know I gave a little bit of a picture, but it's really the change of perceptions in influencers and consumer influencers. So as you guys see those really inflammatory, pretty negative articles, those are the people that we're trying to reach. It's not just, it is a little bit of regular consumers, but we're trying to reach the people that make these broad claims that consumers are listening to, right? It's doctors, it's writers, people that are making documentaries and all of that. So really trying to manage beef's reputation and beef's image so that we're telling a good story. And we do that in a couple ways. We've got the digital command center in our Denver office. We have a smaller version of this in our DC office. And this was paid for through checkoff dollars. So you guys are definitely invested here. We monitor up to 200, potentially more monitors every single day. And that's on topics like welfare, sustainability again, nutrition, cancer, general beef industry topics, everything. Anything that touches beef, we're watching for it so that we can either share it, respond, correct, or do some other kind of outreach, whatever that's going to look like. So I've got a picture of it down in the lower left. We've got 2 people every single day that sit in this room. We all get together as an issues management team and we talk through what our day is going to look like. What do we do? How much of a lift is this going to be? Who do we need to reach out to? And how can we just continue to protect beef's image? And then I've got a couple different pictures of our monitoring systems. So we use one, LexisNexis, in the bottom right. And that gives us a really great picture in terms of traditional media and broadcast media. So that pulls in your CNN, AP, Washington Post. It also pulls in the broadcast clips, like when Dr. Oz says that cows eat cat poop and they get toxoplasmosis and you shouldn't eat beef because of that. Crazy stuff like that. We can pull those broadcast clips and then respond and create some piece of content to respond or elevate, whatever. And then in the upper right, that's a system called TalkWalker, and that's all of our social media monitoring. So what we've tried to do is very intentionally choose these monitoring systems that give us this great full picture in terms of broadcast, traditional, and social media. And what we can do is map conversations, basically. So I know that a lot of my ag friends get pretty worked up about a photo or an article, and they start sharing it on social media, and they're blowing everybody up. Well, that may be happening with an ag group, but consumers aren't even talking about it. It's not on their radar. And now suddenly we've broken into jail because we're saying this article is crazy without an explanation for consumers to know what's going on. In the same way, there may be something blowing up in traditional media that CNN is saying, and I have a few examples of that, where it's really not reaching consumers. And so we've got mainstream media talking about something that consumers don't really care about, which might happen more than anybody thinks. So that's our monitoring system. So on a larger scale, why advocate for beef, right? Why should we help manage the reputation of beef and be worried about beef's image? All of that said, well, who's seen some of these headlines lately? You're going to have to participate in the back. Have you guys seen some of these? The future of food is farming cells, not cattle. Let's put an end to factory farming. Here comes the meat tax. Have you guys seen some of these? Yeah, they make you crazy, right? They make you really, really mad. And we get a lot of emails from producers and state beef councils because it is so frustrating to see this. Some of these, I don't think I have the title in here. Do you guys remember a couple weeks ago, Beyond Meat put out their life cycle assessment directly comparing their product to beef? Did you guys see that? Yeah. Well, consumers, I actually have a timeline of it. Consumers didn't really talk about it. It didn't get a lot of attention. So some of these are really, really concerning, and we're directly responding to them. Like this quartz one, the future of food is farming cells, not cattle. We put some of our content on their site to directly compete with that. But others, like this Beyond Meat big hubbub about their product being more sustainable than beef, nobody really cared about it, and we kind of agreed with that. So we were able to continue to push those messages supporting beef's claim as, the #1 protein. It's desirable, it's good, it's healthy, and consumers responded to that pretty well. So that's one reason to help advocate for beef and really tell your story and help us tell this story. We also see other challenges. These are some big players. You guys might be familiar with the Food Babe. I don't know what she's drinking, but it's probably gross. She was the one, she went after Subway, and this was kind of her claim to fame. There was an ingredient in Subway's bread that was the same ingredient in a yoga mat, right? And we all know that they're not the same compounds. I'm not a scientist, but she went viral by taking a bite out of a yoga mat and made Subway change their bread recipe. So that's how she got famous. She made a lot of crazy claims about beef and hormones and antibiotics, and just caused a lot of consumer concerns around the confidence in beef and the safety of beef. And so we had to deal with her for a little while. We've also got a lot of big players down here. Marion Nestle on the bottom is writing a book right now, coming after beef and dairy industries for their funding of science, which, as the checkoff, that's what we're supposed to do. And then we've got Chipotle. Get antibiotics from your doctor, not your beef. So we've got a lot of just stuff going on. We have a lot of people talking. And let's see if this video works. As an example.
Mom, I really like this.
Cute.
What's it made of?
Wool.
Like from a cow?
Uh-huh.
Duh, actually, all wool comes from a cow. Does cashmere come from a cow too?
Uh-huh.
The boy cow or the girl cow?
If there's any place that could really use a county fair, it's L.A.
The boy cow.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you mean the one with the tusks?
The L.A. County Fair. Kinder, simpler, funner.
So we have all these people making claims, and we have consumers that clearly don't really know what's going on, right? They don't know what we do. They don't know why we do it. They don't know why we like it. And it's just hard to talk about, right? Everybody in this room has a full-time job. Let's not add another job on top of this to explain what I'm doing. It's hard. We're kind of at a challenging kind of crossroads right now. There's also just a popularity of bad information. So you guys know Dr. Oz. You should be taking a multivitamin every day. And on tomorrow's show, I'll tell you how multivitamins are killing you, right? There's a lot of contrasting information. Today, coffee's really bad for you, and tomorrow it's really good for you. One day red meat causes cancer, the next day it doesn't. Right? There's dietary guidelines that consumers just don't understand because there's a lot of conflicting information. And when you don't have a science degree, it's hard to go in and read the science because science is not always science. The data does not meet, some of the claims. We always say correlation does not equal causation. So it's hard for consumers to get their arms around this when they don't know what we do. So here's a few examples, right before you guys feel like the sky is falling. I wanted to give you a few examples of what we as the checkoff are doing through the issues management and media relations team. So you saw one of the headlines before, here comes the meat tax. This was a claim that meat is so bad for the environment that one of the ways we can, just do an automatic fix and decrease demand is to tax it. Similar to cigarettes and other things that people say is really bad for your health, let's tax it and give an incentive for consumers to eat less. Well, we put out an article that says why taxing beef isn't the answer and went through how that's not a solution to a non-problem, really. And we got some good traction out of that. We have people listening. This is the Quartz example. We actually have another article on there as well, but their digital team, their creative team made this for us, which brings another layer of credibility. They have a team of researchers that sits in a room and will create content for companies that want to place information on their site, which is really cool. So our scientist, our sustainability scientist, Dr. Sarah Place, was able to work with their creative team to use UNFAO and Beef Checkoff data to create it's an interactive, it's really, really cool. There's charts about consumption versus production. Consumers can go in and click around and see that the U.S. is the most efficient producer of beef and of cattle. We are a blueprint for the rest of the world to really increase their efficiency in this conversation around sustainability. So that was a really cool piece. This is GreenBiz. It's a leading sustainability platform, mostly in the business world. So it's companies that want to make green sustainability claims, mostly with products, less about their food company supply chains. But because we were one of the first animal production, food companies to place content, our sponsorship pieces are blowing everybody else out of the water. We're some of the most read content on this site right now. And we've got 7 articles and 2 podcasts up there, and they say, we want more. So they already want to talk to us because their readers are asking questions. They're really engaging with our content, and they want to read more about what we've got. So those are just a few examples of some of the heavy-hitting production science content pieces. Beef is What's for Dinner, which is very much consumer-facing, right? So the other ones are more of the influencer, those consumer influencer places where heavy conversations are happening. But Beef is What's for Dinner is also sharing some of this content a little bit softer, right? So as we identify where we're going to place content and who we're going to target, typically the issues management team is looking for those hand raisers, right? It's people that are raising their hand to talk about antibiotics. This concerns me and I want answers about it. Well, that's a place that we can play. Beef is What's for Dinner, however, has a pretty broad audience. It's a lot of moms, a lot of families. Our target audience is the older millennial parent, those people that are making choices to feed their family to help their children thrive. And so many of them are just coming for recipes. They're looking for that feel-good, give-me meal inspiration that includes beef. And so we're trying to give a little bit of a softer touch so that we're not going heavy into antibiotics where they don't have questions, but we're also elevating ourselves as that credentialed expert so that they can come to us if they have questions about other things. And if you guys have been on Beef It's What's for Dinner, we have content across the board about meat and cancer, about safety, about inspections, about all of these tough topics if consumers want it. And so this is just an example of some social pieces. Ranching families have led conservation efforts across the U.S. for generations, right? Pretty soft, but it's still inspiring consumers to come back to us. And then these are a couple of cool examples. I just like the Earth Day picture, so I always like to put that in there. But the upper one is the beef community has improved its sustainability by 5% in just 6 years. So trying to bring more of those soft touches so that consumers do see us as that expert and will come back. So the sky's not falling. Here's I'm going to go through a couple examples of our top 3 issues that we see, how we try to manage them, and how we track them. I think some of these are kind of cool. So as we're looking through this, right, I walked through our issues monitoring systems, the TalkWalker, Lexis, Nexus that we're tracking, getting this great big picture of conversations. But then we also have Google Analytics, we have website analytics, and just that digital information that we're getting through Beef It's What's for Dinner being in this social space. So in the upper right, this is kind of a heat map of concerns, and the number one concern that we consistently see, no matter what we see in the media, is meat and cancer. Red meat and cancer is the number one concern. It's the one thing that consumers are consistently talking about at a pretty high level, and it's the one thing that we're constantly pushing information out. It comes up at every event with dietitians and with moms. Everybody's concerned about it, rightfully so, so we're always prepared for those questions. And we're doing a heat map on that so that we can see if at a certain time of year those concerns spike so that we can push more information or try to see some trends so that we can start predicting some of these concerns. But at the bottom, this is from our issues monitoring. That's a timeline of concerns over the last year. So you'll see at the beginning of the year on the far left, there was a report that came out that said women are at a higher risk of breast cancer from eating 3 pieces of bacon a week. And red meat typically gets lumped in with processed meat because there's a lot of red meat that is processed. So we're always watching for red and processed meat in these conversations. So you can see where that spike was at the beginning of the year. And then chatter went down a little bit, and then we see another spike. And there's a new study that shows a link between diet and colon cancer risk. So now we're looking into this study and what that means. And the nutrition team is leading on, responsive messages, getting out other information. And then our spike goes down, and then we saw 3 more big spikes. And you guys will probably remember that case in California about glyphosate. And I think he was a gardener that won the suit that said using Roundup at this school caused cancer. Well, that we're always monitoring, after the red meat and health cancer finding back in 2015, I think, that we dealt with. We're always monitoring for the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is the IARC up there. So that blew up our monitors. There was no amount of exclusions. We couldn't cut out any search results with glyphosate. We couldn't get those out of our monitors because it is important for us to see that IARC mention. So that pulled a lot of spikes through the summer and into this fall. And then the last one that we see is that processed meat, again, linked to breast cancer. So these are some trends that we're seeing in terms of beef and cancer. And the most frustrating part is they're not really reading the science. They're not reading the claims. They're not getting enough credentialed experts, in our opinion, to comment on some of these. And we're constantly getting lumped in with, red meat and processed meat and lunch meats. And we're not talking about, a whole lifestyle, full picture about how these products do fit into a healthy lifestyle because everything fits in moderation. The next big issue that we see is antibiotics. So we've got red meat and health, and then antibiotics is our second big issue. Again, you'll see the heat wave. So there's a lot of angry red up at the top, which is the red meat and cancer, and then antibiotics in food, animal antibiotics. They start kind of decreasing. That's not to say that's not an issue because antibiotics is the number 2 question that we always get. So here's our timeline again. About February, March time, actually I should start at the beginning. Back in December, we were contacted by an investigative journalist from the New York Times. And he said he wanted to do an article a year later after the VFD was implemented. And so what are we supposed to do here? There were a lot of tough conversations because we don't really want to engage. We know where this is going to go. It's not going to be positive. He's not going to help us out or tell our side of the story. But we really felt like it would be better for us to at least be there and be giving him the right information and give him the opportunity to write something positive in the real story about how antibiotics are used judiciously. So we took him to a feedlot down in Texas. I went down there multiple times, and the article comes out. Not positive, misquoted the feedlot. It was pretty frustrating. So now we're dealing with corrections and coverage and stuff. So that's our first spike. And then a little while later, the CDC put out a big warning about resistant bacteria. The nice thing here was it was a pretty big picture. So they said, number 1, humans are the number 1 abusers of antibiotics. Who doesn't finish their prescription, right? Who's not following doctor's orders? And how many doctors are prescribing something when they really don't need to, or when tests aren't complete, or when mom's really, really worried about a sick kid in kindergarten. So the CDC pointed that out as a problem. In that same vein, they said, we need to take a look at antibiotic use in agriculture. So they gave this holistic look, and there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of chatter about it. And so we pushed more of our BQA messaging, saying antibiotics are used judiciously. Let's work, we're working with all of the bodies that be to make sure that we're in compliance. And then the next spike we saw was kind of a funny one, as a little bit of relief. There was a report that came out of the UK that said Prince Charles uses homeopathy on his cattle. He feeds them oregano and oranges, because he's trying to use less antibiotics. There was no claim on if it works or not, but just kind of a funny, interesting, who doesn't want to hear about what is he, a prince? The Duke, Dutch, I don't know, but the Prince of England, Prince of the UK, raising cattle and feeding them some of these pretty crazy feedstuffs. Then the Environmental Working Group put out a report on supermarket meat and superbugs, that you can get these crazy illnesses from retail meat, which was totally false. They're a pretty activist group. You guys probably saw the Consumer Reports article about drugs in your meat. Pretty big claim. We had to do a pretty significant push to get most of that corrected. And then this last one was the new trade deal and beef exports. A lot of that was out of the UK. Not something that we can or do touch on the checkoff side, but occasionally it blows up our monitors. And then the last one is sustainability. Oops, I think I'm missing a chart. There we go. So sustainability is a really interesting one, because red meat and cancer is constantly, right, the number one concern. It's talked about in all of our monitors. We get questions on it on social. It's most searched for on our website, then antibiotics, and now sustainability. But the interesting thing about how the sustainability conversation has kind of shifted, it's slowly increased in the last, most significantly over the last couple years, but it's turned to mostly emissions and methane. So we all know, you guys have probably heard this, sustainability is a pretty big umbrella. It's got nutrition, it's got welfare, it's got land and water and resources, and it depends on who you're talking to of what they mean by sustainability. So there's a lot of questions that we have to ask when someone asks us, well, is beef sustainable? I don't think it is. Well, let's find out why you think that, because it is, but that's such a broad question and such a broad topic that we really need to hone in on what their concerns are. And what we're seeing is that methane and emissions, right, the greenhouse gases that cattle emit as being ruminants, is really where this conversation has turned. So kind of an interesting change that we're keeping an eye on. I'm not going to walk through all those because you guys might get tired of seeing all these really negative articles. And most of the conversation is on Twitter. So now what? What are we going to do about this, right? I tried to give you, that was pretty broad, that was a lot of information, but I really wanted to give you this big picture in terms of issues management, what we're doing proactively, what we're doing reactively, what we're seeing in the media, so that you've got kind of a big picture, but as fast as we can go through it. But now what are we going to do with all of it, right? Well, stand up for your livelihood. Have you guys heard of the Masters of Beef Advocacy program? Anybody? Geraldine's nodding. We got a couple nodders. If you haven't, please do it. It's free. It's great. It's less technical than BQA, of course. This is all the comm side. This is how you explain BQA. This is how you explain what you do and why you do it and why we like it. It's really, really important, because we as the Beef Checkoff, we're credible. People listen to us. We have USDA oversight and peer-reviewed science coming out, so we're credible, but we're not as credible as you guys. We're not as credible as, the people back home that really, the on-farm, I always try to take pictures when I'm home working cattle, but it's so effective from the people that are doing it, and that is the biggest call to action coming out of this. So there's almost 12,000 people that have completed this program. It's online modules, right, similar to BQA, and it walks through how to explain the full beef life cycle. And you guys probably know that, but what we find, most people going through this, the cow-calf guys can't talk about, they don't really know what happens at a packer level, or, feedlots, they mostly know about what happens at cow-calf and at retail, but, we are expected as the beef community, as people that raise cattle, to know everything that happens to that animal from birth to death. And so being able to really explain, and we use some of our consumer research to make sure that these messages are effective with consumers, so that we're not opening up more questions from them, and we're answering their concerns and giving them the information that they're looking for. So this is the 2.0. We're actually working on a 3.0 now, but it walks through the beef community, cow-calf, feedlot, the packer, and then beef fits what's for dinner, how there's some nutrition messages in there which are super valuable just in how beef fits in a diet. So this is an example of the beef life cycle content that we have on Beef Fits What's for Dinner to answer some of these questions. I know I can't even read the text up here. But the great thing and what we always try to emphasize is who the beef community is. And that when you guys are getting questions or answering questions or trying to think through, is this something that I even want to touch on? We're all in this together, right? From the cow-calf guys, my folks in Minnesota, all the way to that mom or dad or family at the retail meat counter or eating it at home. We're all in this together, right? We know this because in terms of sustainability, if consumers would waste 50% less beef, right, if they would throw away less beef, they would improve beef sustainability by 10%. So sustainability, that's just one example. It doesn't just happen at the farm level. This isn't just happening with, you know, the rotational grazing, new implements, water management, all of that stuff at the farm level. It's happening in the kitchen with families who don't raise beef and they don't know how cattle are raised. So we're all in this together. We're all the beef community. And I think that's been one of the most effective messages, just making people aware that we all have a responsibility here. And then something I really like to point out, this is from the 2012 Ag Census. 91% of cattle farms and ranches in the U.S. are family owned and operated. So we hear a lot of claims about factory farming and how terrible it is. To this day, I've never seen a factory farm, but that's a concern of consumers because it's really inflammatory, and a lot of these, articles, these speakers can make a lot of big claims that they don't have to back up. So I really like to point out that 91% of farms and ranches and feedlots are family owned and operated. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of data in what we see. So that's some of the claims and why we should get involved. But here's some of the research that we've done. So 2/3 of consumers feel positively about the way beef is raised, which is great. Many times I feel like the sky is falling. Being on the issues management team, we see a lot of negative stuff, a lot of negative claims that we're trying to counteract. But we know from our market research, consumers feel positively about the way beef is raised. They just have questions about it. And actually the concerns when making a decision to buy beef, right, this goes directly to demand for our products, your products. The importance factors when making a meal decision at home, production practices aren't even on the top of this list. So the number one concern right now is that it's great tasting, and then that it's safe to eat, and then that it's a good value for the money. But production practices right now are pretty low. They have a few questions. We see that with all these label claims and stuff. There's questions, which is fair. But when they're at the meat case, they want something that tastes good and is safe for their family. And so I think that gives me a lot of confidence when talking with consumers because they know it tastes good, they like it, they crave it. And then this is what I touched on a little bit earlier, but the credibility of you guys, of us, is pretty high. So they see a researcher or an academic as highly credible, kind of the number one person with a lot of letters behind their name, and then USDA, and then a family farm owner, and then a veterinarian, and then the FDA. So consumers see you guys as more credible than the FDA, which is a little concerning, but also they want to hear from you. They want to find out what you're doing and why you do it. So when Geraldine asked me to come and speak, part of the ask was, how do we engage with activists? How do we deal with them? What can we be doing? Well, how should we engage with activists? Don't. We get this question a lot because they're kind of nutty, right? They make a lot of crazy claims and you feel they are really overwhelming. They will attack a Twitter thread or a hashtag or whatever's going on. They're making billboards now. And it's just, it makes you crazy. It makes you want to respond and do something just as dramatic to get that narrative back. But do we have anything in common with them? Nothing. We don't have the same values. We don't, typically when we're looking for someone to engage with, it's can we find any common ground? Like, can we find food waste? Reducing food waste is common ground. That's a pretty easy one for us to find common ground with anyone. Except activists, right? Because when we say waste less beef, they say don't eat beef. When we say, take care of your animals and get BQA certified, they say don't raise animals. So just don't engage with them. You can't have a positive conversation. You can't land in a good place. You're never going to find any common ground with them. So who should we engage with? Anybody else. Literally anybody else. Everybody has questions, and that's who we should be talking to. Whoever your sphere of influence is, that's who we should be engaging with. So consumers have questions, right? And they typically fall in like one of 5 buckets. So does beef come from factory farms? How is it raised? Is it safe to feed my family? So that safety question is, a pretty consistent concern. Does it taste good? Is it safe to feed my family? Are livestock treated properly? That welfare question is, kind of always percolating there. Are cattle causing global warming and sustainability? And does eating red meat increase my risk of heart disease or cancer? Those are typically our big 5. Is it safe? Are the animals treated well? Should I eat it? Is it going to give me cancer? And what we found is that our answers, right? We are hardworking, salt of the earth. Well, I work hard too, right? I'm trying to feed my family too. And we're a family farm. Yeah, most of them aren't anymore. Well, it's an affordable product, right? Ground beef is really affordable for families. But what's the expense? How cheap are you making these animals, right? So our answers aren't always addressing their concerns. And so we have done a lot of research into how to frame messages to really listen and hear their concerns, right? I also eat beef. How many people in this room eat beef? Great. We've got one great talking point. We all care about it tasting delicious. We all care about it being safe. We all care about the long-term health of our families. So we want to make sure that we're improving and we're answering their questions. And so we found that a continuous improvement message is effective almost all the way across the board. So we'll work through kind of creating some answers. But as an industry, right, as a beef eater, let's start there. I eat beef too. I feed it to my family. I really hope it's safe. I know it's safe. I'm confident in the regulations and inspections and also the people raising my product. So I care about it too. But the beef industry is constantly improving to make a better product, something that tastes even better, something that is even safer, right? We're not just staying stagnant. We're continuously improving to meet your standards and expectations. And that's really effective with consumers. So 2 ways when you're engaging with anyone. First, we call it the 2 C's. So it's we care and we're capable. So we hear your concerns, right? I also meet them kind of on an emotional level. Guys, you don't have to go too emotional. But, right, we all care about the safety and quality of our meat. So that's where we meet them at we care. I have the same concerns as you. But we're also capable. So then we give them the facts. Because what we've noticed a lot of times, somebody has concerns, right? I'm worried that beef isn't sustainable. Well, I'm going to hit them with every fact that I have from the latest Cattlemen's Stewardship Review. They will walk away knowing every data point on that document. And they're like, okay, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about because I didn't meet them where their concerns are. Is beef sustainable? Well, I'm worried about that too. That's important to me. It's important that, I'm the 6th generation on my family's farm, and hopefully we can continue that. But here's the ways that we're doing that tactically. Because this is very cheesy. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Meet them first and then give them all the data. So we're going to go through a couple examples. You guys can be thankful for this, I was going to make everybody pair up and then talk into the microphone, but I figured it's a little early to be doing too many exercises. So safety is a pretty big concern. You guys all probably saw the salmonella recall recently, right? That raised a lot of concerns through our office. Is it safe? Is beef safe to eat? Do I want to eat it? So we care, right? We're also beef consumers. We care about the wholesomeness and healthfulness of the beef that we produce and provide for my family and for your family, right? So we have the same concerns here. But we're also capable. So the beef checkoff, the beef industry, and these numbers are probably a little bit out of date, but we've invested $30 million checkoff dollars in beef safety research since 1993. That number is probably higher. So I'm not a numbers person. I made it through Calc 2, and I just don't like it. My mom is a math professor. She's very concrete, sequential. And to this day, I can't remember all this data. I have given presentations like this 100 times, and I still can't remember all these numbers. So typically, what I say, if you guys are like me, is that I also care about the safety and wholesomeness of these products because I eat retail beef right now. I buy it from the grocery store in Denver. And I know that the Beef Checkoff has invested millions on millions on millions of dollars to make sure that this is a safe product for you. So the numbers, I tend to leave them out because I can't always remember them. But quantifying that value that we have invested, we're putting our money where our mouth is a pretty effective way to do that. And then this is a chart going through 2014, so it's not accounting for the pretty big recall lately, but we know that total recalls have gone down. Total recalls have increased due to a higher quality of inspections, but the beef-related ones have remained pretty steady, right, with the exception of the one a couple weeks ago. And E. coli has really trended down, which is really exciting to see. I know most of all of you guys, we all lived through the Jack in the Box improvements from the 90s, and so this is a really cool, exciting thing for us to feature that the industry has really invested in. The next one is animal care, right? Question number 2, are these animals treated well? Are animals cared for humanely? So we care, right? Who cares about the cattle that they're raising, the animals back home? Yep, all the hands. So we know that providing care for these animals is an obligation and not an option. I'm with you there. I care about the animals that we're raising. It's important to me that they're safe and healthy and, happy cows. But we're also capable. So as an industry, again, we've put our money where our mouth is. We created standards of care that provide training for everybody who handles and touches cattle. So who's BQA certified? Moment of honesty, hopefully a few. It's a free program now. So as an industry, we care so much about the welfare of our animals that we created a standard to make sure that they are being taken care of. Who likes seeing pictures like this or videos? Nobody, right? They suck. I hate seeing stuff like this. And the hardest thing, especially when we're doing, trainings with students and people that really, really want to touch on the welfare stuff, is they say, well, there's just one bad apple, right? There's bad apple, there's bad teachers, there's bad doctors, which is true, but consumers are still like, yeah, but I have to eat this. One bad actor, well, you're ruining it for everybody. So it's not a great response. So what we try to say is, I hate seeing these too. These videos, these pictures, they're terrible, and it's not right for anybody to be doing that. And as a beef industry, we do all of our due diligence to make sure that those people, whatever's happening, that they don't stay in business because it's not right? Nobody likes to see that kind of stuff. So we use BQA to make sure that we are training people and that this doesn't happen. Meeting them where their concerns are, because brushing it off as well, he's just one person, it's not effective with consumers. It's a great talking point because it is just one person, right? It's not the majority, but it's not meeting their concerns with the information that they're looking for. So we care, right? Caring for our land, our livelihood, our legacy. This is really what enables future generations to be able to continue to do what we love. And we're also capable. So the beef industry completed the most comprehensive life cycle assessment ever done on a food product. To this day, it is still the most comprehensive ever done. In the next couple months, we're going to have some more regional data rolling out, which should be really cool. And this data tells us that we're on the right path with all these different improvements, to water quality and emissions. So hopefully you guys have seen this. But it gives a really great picture in the frame of we have a growing population, right? We're going to have to feed, 9 billion, 10 billion people by the year 2050. And we're going to have to do that somehow. And so what we've seen already, I think this one was 2005 to 2011, and the next iteration will be coming out. But we've got a decrease in emissions to water, decrease in emissions to soil, decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. There's a lot of continuous improvement efforts that we have done to make sure that this is a sustainable product. Beef nutrition. So we care, right? Who eats beef? Who wants it to be healthy and safe? Yes, all the hands. So we care about our health and the health of our families. We care about what's being served at our own dinner plate as well as everybody else's, right? We're all eating the same thing. And we're also capable. So we know that beef is an important part of a healthy diet. It provides 10 essential nutrients and vitamins. And then this is a great spot to put in that holistic diet. So, right, everybody likes to indulge, but all things in moderation, fitting beef into a healthy diet with fruits and vegetables and, your healthy fats a glass of milk, you can create a healthy, active lifestyle, and it absolutely fits. We have research to prove that. So we put together Beef's Big 10. You literally cannot live without the B vitamins. And so this is just a great picture that, you guys probably all heard the ZIP, zinc, iron, protein, plus your Bs. Great talking point with beef, just all the vitamins that it brings to the table in terms of helping families thrive and keeping you active and running on these crazy lifestyles that we have. Plant proteins are a pretty big topic of conversation right now. And I'll be totally honest, as the checkoff, we're trying to figure out what we can say because with USDA oversight, we can't disparage another product. So we can't say beef's better than chicken, right? We're never going to say that. But we can't also, in that same vein, we can't say beef is better than Impossible Foods or Impossible Burgers because that's considered disparaging. Now, right, wrong, or otherwise, we have to find a way around that. We have to talk about all the great things in our product, even though they can say they're better than us. Through USDA, we can't say stuff like that right now. So what we're trying to do is remind everybody that for nutrition reasons, right, we don't have 22 ingredients in our products. We have one, just beef, and also the nutritional value that we bring to the table. So we don't have those other products on here yet. We're working through the nutritional comparisons. But for example, I like peanut butter as much as the next person. I could eat it all day, give me a spoon, but that's not in moderation in a healthy diet. So on our chart here, we've got lean beef, and this is a comparison of how many calories for 25 grams of protein, right? So in 3 ounces of beef, about 150 calories, you get 25 grams of protein, which is a pretty good punch for what you're doing. Well, if we're going for peanut butter, consumers consider peanut butter a good source of protein. So for 25 grams of protein, if you're going to get it from peanut butter, that's 560 calories. I mean, you just quadrupled your calories for the same amount of protein. If we're going to go for black beans, that's 1 3/4 cups for almost 400 calories. So nutritionally, it just doesn't make sense. Beef is such a complete quality protein that can't really argue with it, in my opinion. So make sure you share your story. You guys are so credible. You're a trusted source. Please speak up for the beef community because there's a lot of questions and concerns right now, and people want to hear from you. So I'm wrapping up, and then I think we'll have a little bit of time for questions. Yep. Listen, right? Meet them where they're at. Listen first. Don't get defensive. It's really, really hard when people say, well, beef is really bad for me. Like, it's personal. I mean, this is what we do, right? Don't let it be personal because they don't get it, right? They want to know what's going on, and it's our job to tell them that. Connect with them, right? Meet them at the we care, I also care, I have the same concerns as you, because we all do. And then use the we're capable. Give examples of what you do. Nobody can argue with your experience. I always like to tell people that when we do these trainings. Nobody can argue with what you've experienced. So use your examples because consumers trust you and they want to hear those examples. And so this just hopefully brings it all to life. After a long day in the field, it's easy to feel attacked, but all they really want to know is more about their food, and that's pretty reasonable. So that's our lightning round of issues, reputation, advocacy, and media. Do you guys have questions? I hope you do. Anything? Ooh, that's a good question. It's pretty varied, so I wouldn't say they're all, how did you put it? They're not all gathering in a group. I think they are leaning on each other, to get their claims and information. A lot of it is just special interests. PETA has a lot of donors. HSUS has a lot of moms and grandmas and grandpas who think that they're saving the whales because of all these, the commercials that they put on there. They act like they're saving the dogs. So, I think it's just misinformed people that are really helping to continue that narrative. I don't think so. I think, go ahead. Yeah, they are very well funded. And the most frustrating thing now is that we have a lot of academics that are using their position and their science to seem more credible without giving the full story in methodology and just inconsistencies. So, yes. Mm-hmm. No. Mm-hmm. I know. And that narrative that has never, it won't go away. I mean, we have it on the website. We're pushing it in our earned media efforts, like the New York Times example that I gave. We are constantly trying to combat this claim that using antibiotics in beef production equals antibiotics in your meat, right? Despite all of the federal regulation and inspection and just safety standards in place, it's a valid concern, but it's also founded on inaccurate information, these inaccurate claims. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Man, these are good questions. These are hard questions. It's pretty personal targeting. We can reach the same consumers. I see your hand back here. We can target through our, promotion system, I guess, on social, the same people that follow, not the activists, but the same consumers that have concerns and are seeing some stuff from PETA and these activist organizations, and we can target them too. So we're trying to have conversations where they are, meet them where they're at with their concerns. And it's a hard battle to fight because it's easier for them to say there's antibiotics in your steak than it is for us to say, well, there's federal regulation and oversight and judicious use and BQA. It's longer to explain the facts than it is to make a crazy statement. And so, uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Back here. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Good to hear. I know Elanco and Merck and Zoa, all three of them have really, really great programs. And BI, yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's good to know. Yes. Yeah, so, much like humans, once you wait take your full dose, it's out of your system after so many days. Same with cattle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great question. So, if you guys haven't or have done your MBA training, right? We send a lot of information and content to the people on that email distribution list. So, number one, sign up there. If you guys ever do have questions, email me. I mean, it's up on the board. I work for the checkoff. I work for you guys. So please email me when you have questions or see crazy things, because that's what we're here to do. And then also, Beef is What's for Dinner is constantly getting new information on it. That's kind of our go-to place. So as you're looking for stuff to use and content to answer questions with, kind of the latest and greatest tips, tricks, things that we're learning, those are the places that I would recommend. And I think there was a second part to your question. Ooh, isn't that good? That is a good question. Humane Watch, I actually follow them too. Let me work on that. I'll send that to Geraldine after this so that you guys have some other places to look. That's a good question. What else? In our final 6 minutes? Yes. Ooh, I don't work on trade stuff. I can connect you with the guy that does in our DC office. I don't know how much control we have over stuff coming in. That's more of a World Trade Organization call than checkoff. Well, so all imported beef, we do deal with this on the checkoff side. All imported beef is federally inspected by, our FSIS. So, that's how we caught the Brazilian meat that had all those lesions and potential, live diseases coming in on them. But, consumers and we should have confidence in the imported product. Not that it's as good as, and this is just my, personal opinion, not that it's as good as ours, because there is high demand. The U.S. makes the most delicious, high-quality beef in the world, but all imported meat is inspected to our standards as well. In terms of safety, the only other thing is you guys are thinking about, I always feel like I reach my friends, and all of my friends are ag kids, mostly. So anytime that we can reach outside the choir, because it's great that I'm telling you guys that beef is safe and nutritious, because you guys already believe me, right? This is a pretty friendly crew. Retailers and food service companies in the supply chain are really taking a lot of heat right now from activist organizations. So if you do go back at home and you're looking to reach outside your choir, which I would encourage all of you, go to your grocery store and ask how you can help. If that's working with us to get a dietitian on staff to answer questions, or if that's you guys just being there in a cowboy hat by the meat case. I know that it feels cheesy, and we used to do that back in the 90s, I think. I was doing that as a beef ambassador 100 years ago. But that's where people have questions, and retailers need, if you guys are sending them the information that we have, just making them feel confident in their products so that retailers don't make big claims, because they get 100 calls a day from activists. That is really where the pressure's going right now, and that's where they need support. So thank you guys for having me. I hope this was helpful.